Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwa, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I'll introduce the members of the panel. I am chairing, my name is Stu McPherson. On the panel with myself via Zoom is Mr. Ron Merritt and Mr. Richard Whitbread. The assessor representing the assessment department is Mr. Nathan Kupfer, and the administrative personnel today is Ms. Nicole Carnegie. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with the property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 2 through 7 on our docket today. Ms. Carnegie, would you please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Nathan Kupfer.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Navarro. You're here representing the owners of 6 properties, and it's the amount of assessed value only that we're dealing with today?
Correct.
Good, thank you. We'll just deal with the items as they appear on the docket. So the first one we're going to deal with is item number 2, 1567 Arlington. So when you're ready, Mr. Assessor, we'll hear your evidence, please.
This is file number 23-413, roll number 140402481100. The street address is 1567 Arlington Street. This is a former Husky gas station, now co-op. So I believe this was part of a large package of Husky gas stations that transacted about a year ago. I believe there's well over 100 of them that sold and became co-op gas stations. So now I believe this is showing co-op signage. The actual year built for the structure is 1960 with an effective year of 1974. The land area is 11,267 square feet. And we have a 2024 modeled assessment of $912,000 on this property. Scrolling to page 2 of my brief, you can see an overhead view of the subject property. So we are right on the corner of Arlington and Redwood Avenue. So this is a fairly high traffic location. So they would get a lot of exposure for a gas station. Page 3 of my brief shows the Google Street View. Again, you can see the building looks fairly well maintained. They have a fair land to building ratio, and again, would get a decent amount of traffic. I think this is a fairly good location for a gas station. Page 4 of my brief shows our rent comparables for gas stations. So I haven't made any adjustments to this. This is kind of a standard workup we have for our gas station comps. Some of them are quite a bit older. You'll notice there is quite a fluctuation in these comparables. It looks actually fairly similar to the agent's comparables table as well. You'll notice that gas kiosks that are quite a bit smaller tend to have quite a bit higher rent per square foot. As you can see, namely with comparables 4, comparables 9, and comparables 2, all around that kind of 500 square foot range, they tend to get quite high rents per foot. Whereas the larger kiosks, the ones in the 2,000 square foot range, tend to go for a bit lower, tend to be in more of that $30 to $40 a foot range. We also have a few car wash comparables as well. This subject property has no car wash. It's just the gas pumps, tanks, and canopy that we'll be evaluating today. So we're just looking at the SKP rents for the subject property. Page 5 of my brief shows the income value workup. So this gas station is kind of right in the middle. It's not one of the smaller ones. It's not one of the bigger ones. It's 1,296 square feet. We have a modeled rent of $38.05, which I think falls well into that sample size that I provided for you. Everything here is model driven. Our 2% vacancy, our 3% non-recoverable expenses, our $6 shortfall. In this case, our model is applying a capitalization rate that's quite high, 7.35%. And this is deriving an income stream of $635,660. Gas stations are always evaluated the same way within our system. They get an income stream based on the gas kiosk, and car wash. And then there's an additional building value component that's added based on the tanks, pumps, and canopy. So in this case, the income stream, like I said, is about $636,000, and the additional building value is $276,000, giving us our total estimated value, again, modeled at $912,000. Page 6 of my brief shows the income value summary. Again, only one stream on this property, no car wash or anything like that. So it's just a summary of the SKP stream. Pages 7 and 8 of my brief are the Municipal Act excerpts, as well as our standard capitalization rate tables. You'll notice we don't have a gas station category. Generally, these tend to fall somewhere on the lower end of our retail capitalization rates. It's not uncommon to see our model spit out, 5.5% cap rates for gas stations, which is why I was surprised to see this one at about 7.35. I'd consider that to be on the higher end. Pages 9 and 10 of my brief show the income and expense mailer. So the ownership wasn't quite made clear here. It looks like it is a separate owner, JFTM Investments. They don't indicate whether it's fully or partially owner occupied, but they do list a lease in place with Husky Energy of $2,875 net per month. Should be $34,500 a year net NOI. And then the last 2 pages of my brief are the COVID questionnaire, just indicating that there was no impact. Again, this is a gas station, so it wasn't closed or anything like that for COVID. So this is all the information I have on the property. I haven't personally visited it, but based on what I know, I would say our $912,000 assessment is probably in the right ballpark, and I'm going to recommend that assessment be maintained today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
Yes, Mr. Cupford, have you visited this property?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Next question pertains to your list on page 4 of your chart. Those are the rent comparables. Comp number 1, 690 Sterling Lion. When I calculate the rate per square foot on it, I get $28.97 per square foot based on $105,000 pad site rent. Can you tell me how you came up with the skip rent or the SKP rent and the VCW rent, meaning the car wash?
I can. So oftentimes when these are submitted to the department, they aren't broken down with a separate car wash rent and a separate SKP rent. So what the assessor's done here, when that's not broken down, is they assigned a $10.50 car wash rent, and then the remainder was allotted to the SKP rent. So in this case, they would have allotted $10.50 for the vehicle car wash, and then the remaining rent would have been divided by the 2,250 square foot SKP area, and that's what gives you the $40.25 rate.
Okay, so just to be clear then, this is something that the assessor has done. This is not something that came out of the lease.
The lease would have
Or
stated
sorry, the submission that the owner made to the assessment department.
yeah, so the submission would have said $50.75 total, and then it's the assessor who broke it down between the car wash rent and the SKP rent. Yes.
$50. $105,000 pad site lease. That's the only information on there. Can you confirm that?
No, I can't. I haven't reviewed any of the income and expense mailers myself. Like I said, this was put together by our department, and this is how that calculation was derived.
Okay. Okay, that's my, those are my questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Merritt, any questions for the assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, the rate that you're using for this property is about $38.65 a square foot. Did that take into account that the property is located like it's in the north end?
So I think that's where the capitalization rate is coming from, actually. The elevated 7.35 has more to do with the north end location than the rents. I think our model rents are largely just derived based on the leasable area. Again, smaller leasable area is going to push up the rents and vice versa.
All right, that's the only question I have. Thank you very kindly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread.
No, I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned that there was a sale from Husky to Co-op. Was that a post-reference sale?
It would be post-reference, and it would also be a package sale, part of like hundreds of gas stations that transacted together. So we're not using them for any of our assessments here.
Okay, thank you. And the 276,000 additional value, do you have a breakdown of what that is?
We generally don't provide the breakdown. I can tell you these are Marshall and Swift derived values that get fed into our model, and they're supposed to encompass the tanks, pumps, and canopy for the gas station property. So that's effectively everything outside of the kiosk.
Okay, so it doesn't give you a breakdown as to the number of pumps because they're done on a per pump basis, are they not?
It doesn't as part of this breakdown. In the future, I could probably go into our model and start producing something that includes a cost breakdown if that's what you guys are looking for. Generally, our cost values aren't too contentious with the agents, so we don't bother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as there's an agreement on it, then it's not a matter of contention. But if it's 6 pumps versus 12 pumps or something like that, certainly it's be advantageous for us to know that anyway.
No, fair enough.
Okay. And then I think you also mentioned the actual lease. You said that there was a net operating income of about $34,000.
So it's been indicated to us here. Again, this is no longer the owner, so we can't reach out and get further information here. But yeah, they have an indicated net monthly of $28.75, which would equate to $34,500. And that would have been signed back in 2019, so obviously prior to these sales.
Okay, but you didn't take that into consideration. You just went with the model-driven NOI, correct?
Yeah, so like I said, I think our model-driven NOI is probably on the higher end, and our capitalization rate is also on the higher end. And the property assessment value, the total market value that's being produced here, I think is a reasonable one at 912.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Navarro, we'll hear from you, please.
Okay, this is 1567 Arlington Street. If you turn to page number 8, you can see the property before and after. I can't give you the specific date when I was here. It was about 2 weeks ago. So I had a short walk into the location and took some pictures. So based on what I saw, this was still, you can see that it had been upgraded, but it still looked very old inside. So I think the effective age that the assessor has put on it is probably reflective of its age. In terms of the size of the property, I've written down the information there. 1,296 square feet, wood frame structure, 14-foot wall height, built in 1960. And the site is 11,267 square feet with C1 commercial zoning. You could see it's on the corner of Arlington and Redwood. If we turn to page 14, you can see the comparisons that we've used, and obviously we've used the income approach. The chart that we have is broken down into 3 different categories. We have a combination C-store and car wash, C-store only, and then there are 4 categories. Small kiosks, so these would be smaller than 1,000 square feet, and we have 2 car washes also. So because this is C-store only, the comparisons that I'm looking at specifically are the C-store only ones, which are labeled in blue. And those are number 4, 7, 8, and 9.
Right.
The rent that I've chosen for this selection is $24 per square foot. And again, that is based on the age, on the location. So 24 is what we've gone with. In terms of vacancy, it's 2%. Shortfall of $6 per square foot. We've kept in the management and other, which are the non-recoverable expenses. And if you turn to page 19, you can see our final summary. Starting at the beginning, the property is 1,296 square feet, $24 per square foot. That gives us 31,104, 2% vacancy, giving us an effective of 30,482. Expense allowance is 2,289, giving us a net operating income of 28,193, and a capitalization rate of 6.75. That gives us an income value of 417,669. You'll notice that throughout these appeals, we are typically going for capitalization rates that are in the 6.5, 6.75 range. There is some variation depending on the location. Obviously, we think this is compared to other parts of the city, we would say that this is below average. So that's why we've given it a 6.75. In terms of the adjustments, $280,000, and that is very close to what the assessor has as well. So this is a 4 dispenser, 8 pump location. So in each dispenser, there are 2 pumps on either side, so 8 pumps, and 3 tanks as well, plus the canopy itself. So again, our adjustment is $280,000 on the cost elements. The indicated market value is $697,699 or $698,000. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, questions for the applicant?
Just a few, thank you. Looking at your comparables table on page 14, are you able to identify any comparable you would say approximates the subject property here?
So as I mentioned in the while I was doing the brief, the best comparisons are obviously the ones that are most like the subject. So those are the ones that are highlighted in blue. So that would be 4, 7, 8, and 9. And we have ranges going there from 1544 per square foot all the way to 3293 per square foot. Obviously, I'm adjusting the rent because I feel that the rent would be lower at this location. It is an older building. In terms of traffic flow, I don't think it would be as high as other parts of the city where you see, larger gas stations, especially on main thoroughfares like, the main arteries. I consider Arlington. I don't consider Arlington a main artery. And as well, in terms of its dispensing ability, it's certainly not. For example, I mean, there are some stations that have up to 16 dispensers. When you think about, 2 pumps on each one, that's quite a bit more capacity than this one. In my opinion, this would be on the lower end. So on top of the location, on top of the age, those are my reasons for reducing the rent to $24 per square foot.
Your comparable number 4 really stands out on Regent with only a $15.44 rent.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to example, your comparable 8, which is on Keewatin, which you would say gets less exposure than Regent. So it's a similar age, similar size, similar lease date, but the one on Keewatin is being reported at twice as high of a rent. Do you have any comment on that? Why is Keewatin twice as good of a location as Regent on your comparables table?
Right. Well, I believe 120 Keewatin has actually been upgraded. So it's, I mean, I'm showing an effective age of 1981, but I believe that age might be a little bit more. I'm not sure actually if this is the 7-Eleven or the Husky. I can't tell you. However, in terms of the traffic flow, I think Keewatin and McPhillips are probably higher. So that would be my reasoning for having a lower rent on this, on top of the age.
And then in terms of size, the subject property is 1,296 square feet, correct?
Sure, the C-store is. That's correct.
Which would actually be closer in leasable area to your small kiosks than it would be to the majority of your C-stores, with the exception of comparable number 7, correct?
Yeah, I believe this is this is a larger kiosk. It's not like those ones that you're looking at where I say small kiosks. There is a visible difference between those types and the ones that we're looking at now.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, any questions for the applicant?
Just, sorry. You indicated that the exterior has been upgraded, and I didn't catch that. Was that post-reference or pre-reference state?
It would have to be, no, the exterior has been rebranded. That was recently, but that was just putting on the co-op signage versus the old Husky signage. No, I imagine something occurred probably sometime in the 1980s that brought the effective age up from 1960. It's still very dated inside there, but my best estimate is that sometime in the maybe early to mid 80s, it was upgraded. Therefore, it brings up the effective age. So does that answer your question?
Well, I was going to carry it forward to ask you about the interior. Does it look like the original interior from 1960, 1974?
I mean, I wasn't really around in 1960s. So
No, but I think you've been in enough buildings, Marcelo, that
yeah,
you would have some sense of what.
Well, that's
dating.
that's a peculiar thing that you just said, because the thing is that you don't see many gas stations that are that old. Most gas stations today, whether it's you know, depending on whether they are the branded gas stations, the co-ops, the Shells, the Essos, all of those types of gas stations um, are typically upgraded every so often, and it's a regular cycle of upgrades. So they don't allow the properties to actually age too much. And you know, these things have a finite life as well, because typically they are just very basic construction. So they do, you know, because the doors are always opening, people are always coming in and out. They are affected by that. So when you see a building that was around from 1960, it's more uncommon than common. So when I looked at this building, it looked like something that I remember seeing from the 1980s. So that's why I'm saying that it was probably upgraded sometime in the 1980s, and it hasn't been upgraded since. So
Typically, when you see a co-op makeover, it's fairly substantial, isn't it?
well, yeah, there's
in recent years.
absolutely. I mean, the building would have to be in very fine condition for it to actually be kept. I mean, I don't know if you know the Grant Park area, but that one is being completely torn down, where there used to be a Petro Canada there.
Yes.
And you know, there's a co-op going in there. So I mean, that tells you about how long they let it go before they actually start thinking about rebuilding it.
Yeah.
This is a peculiar case. I don't know why they didn't knock it down. It could be because of the ownership, maybe. Yeah, it's JFTM Investments Limited, meaning that what Co-op did in this case is they came in and bought the business, which was the former Husky. They didn't buy the real estate, so that didn't come as part of the sale. Only the business came as part of the sale. So they didn't, I guess the owners of it feel that it's still worth keeping. But I mean, if you have a branded gas station, they would never let this thing stand at that age. They would have knocked it down by now and built something new.
Right. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little follow-up, I guess, Mr. Navarro. This property, is it on the contaminated list at all?
I believe most gas stations are on the contaminated list.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And you feel like the 6.75 is the right cap rate for this property?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I made my adjustment on the rent. In terms of the cap rate, we have a cap rate submission that we made on this, and we're following what the retail cap rates are saying. This is a retail property, so we follow our capitalization rate tables. In this instance, because of the age and location, we felt that 6.75 was, you know, a fair. I don't know what more I can say about that.
Okay, that's fine. And the pump values, etc., are are fairly close together from the city and what you're at also.
Correct.
Okay. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. Desire for summation, Mr. Cuthbert.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
No, thank you.
Thank you. We'll conclude that matter then. Can move on to number 3 on our docket, 780 Burrows. I understand that there's a preliminary issue on this, Mr. Kupfer.
Yes, there's a non-cooperation request for this property. Going back through our records here, I wasn't able to find an income and expense mailer that had been submitted to us since 2015 for this property. That's the one I've included at the end of the brief. The delivery address was for a community mailbox. That's all I have on my page 8. So because it's a community mailbox and this was COVID, it's not signed. So we just have the one page here. But yeah, that's why we're requesting the non-cooperation for this property.
Mr. Navarro, questions regarding that evidence?
So it's a community mailbox, but there's no address on here. Can you tell me what the address is that it was delivered to? And also, on top of that, the date. All we have is June 10th, but what year is that? Usually there's more information given than just this page, so I'm kind of just wondering, was there more?
No, so the year is shown as 2019 underneath there, and then this is the only page that we got for this from Canada Post.
Okay, but the information that would have been sought for the 2020 income and expenses, so that would have been mailed out in June of 2021.
Correct. This is just a copyright, the 2019 Canada Post Corporation.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman, right now. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
Yes, typically, Nathan, there's a letter from the department, and they're typically dated in June 10th-ish of the year, and that would have a name and a mailing address on that letter. I don't see that attached here. You didn't receive that as part of the evidence?
I specifically contacted our data services supervisor and confirmed this is all we received from Canada Post for this property.
But would you not in your own records have a letter that went to the taxpayer?
Again, I can't say. This is all I have for this property.
Thank you. No further questions.
I have nothing further. Mr. Navarro, did you want to speak to this?
Well, again, I don't think there's enough information here to, I think, warrant the penalty, so I will leave it at that.
Thank you. We will take a short recess to deliberate on this. It's now 9:36. So let's return at 9:45, please. So if you would put us in camera, please, Ms. Carnegie. Thank you. I will call the meeting back to order. We have discussed the matter and we've decided that the assessor's request for non-cooperation is not granted due to the lack of evidence. So therefore, Mr. Kupfer, we'll hear your evidence when you're ready, please.
This is file number 23-269. Roll number is 140-224-72000. The address is 780 Burrows Avenue. We're going to take a break from gas stations. This is a vehicle service related property. The year built of 1928, we've applied no effective age to it. We have a land area of 2,463 square feet and a leasable area of 1,170 square feet, and a 2021 modeled assessment of $221,000. Page 2 of my brief shows no sale history for the property. We are right on the corner of Burroughs and Arlington, so a fairly high traffic location, good exposure again. Page 3 of my brief shows a photo, Google Street View photo, so you can see what the shop looks like. Obviously, it is a smaller auto body shop. They do have a decent amount of area here. It looks like for parking and for the actual size of the shop, it seems adjustable and fitting. Underneath that photo, you have our widespread vehicle service garage comparable properties. I've included everything we have here, the high ones and the low ones, all the way from about $7.50 up to about $22, $23, with an average rate in the middle of that of about $15.96 and a median of $15.50. Page 4 of my brief shows the income stream. There's only one income stream on this property. Like I said, we have 1,170 square feet of leasable area, a modeled rent of $16.69. Again, everything here is being generated by our model, including our capitalization rate of 8.35%, and that's giving us our $221,000 income value for this property. Page 5 shows the summary of streams. Again, there's only one on this property. Page 6 and 7 are our standard inserts. Page 8 relates to the non-cooperation. Again, we haven't received reporting from this property since 2015. That's what I've included underneath for page 9 and page 10. And all the way back in 2015, they were indicating a net operating income of $18,657 approximately, which is almost exactly what we have modeled here for the 2021 assessment. We have $18,422. So even all the way back to 2015 with what they were reporting, our model seems to be aligning with that. And we have a higher capitalization rate on this at 8.35%. So I really can't tell you why this is being appealed. Yeah, that's all the information I have on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
Sure. Have you been to this location?
No.
Okay. Now, which of your comparables do you think fits the subject best?
I don't think one does fit it best.
Mm-hmm. Have you been to any of these locations that you have on the UN comparable list?
Not for an official inspection, no.
Okay. And in terms of your capitalization rate, that was model driven, correct?
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cooper, I know where this property is. It's right in the corner. It's a very small lot, is it not?
Yeah, about 2,400 square feet.
Yeah. So roughly speaking, it's like a 25 by 100-foot lot. Correct?
Roughly. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a garage on it, and I think it's a 2-bay garage for automobiles. And again, it's in the north end too. So, and you're using a cap rate of 8.35. You feel like that is justified for that cap rate for the location of the property?
Absolutely. This cap rate is on the higher end of any submitted comparable cap rates. And like I said, the operating income that's been submitted all the way back to 2015 is consistent with what we have modeled here. So the rent is clearly a fair one.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
Yes, I'm looking at page 3, your photograph. And to the right of the building, it looks like a second garage. Do you know if that is a separate building?
It's a separate property. You're talking about on a separate piece of property or on the same property?
No, it looks like it's on the same piece of property. When I look at the photo above, it looks like a small building, just, I'm sorry, I don't know the directions. It's on the left of your building on page 2. And when I look face on, it's to the right of the building. It looks like a single garage building.
All I can see in my photos here is a small shed just beside the automotive group there. And I would suggest it's used for storage of tools and that sort of thing. I know that quite a few of these properties are owned by the same owner here, the trustee of Ukrainian Greek Orthodox Church there along this strip. So it's possible that they use some of the adjoining properties for similar uses. But again, in terms of this property standalone, every rate that we're using here is absolutely a fair one.
I would never impugn that you weren't using fair rates, Nathan. I think they're always fair. My second question relates to that white box. Looking at the photo on page 3, it looks like, is it a trailer or a building again? Or page 2, looking down.
To the left of the subject property.
Yeah, there's a small dark, what you say is a shed, and then there's a double the length of that shed is a long white, not a vehicle, but a box of some sort.
Yeah, it looks like a storage container to me from this angle, but I can't 100% be sure.
Like a semi-trailer storage unit?
It could be, yes.
Okay. Now that's all my questions. Thank you.
I thank you. I have no questions. So, Mr. Navarro, we'll hear from you, please.
Okay. This is 780 Burroughs Avenue. Built in 1928. We put an effective age of 1950 on it. I'm not sure about the history of this property entirely. I'm not sure if it was a garage always. I suspect that it was probably something else. It's not at one point, and then it became a garage later on. But based on the visual inspection, I put an effective age of 1950 on it. In terms of the location, you can see the upper, or on page 6, you can see the overhead, the general location there on Burroughs and Arlington. And then on page 7, you see the bird's eye. So you see a little red mark on top of the building. And if you go to the right of that, where the building ends, essentially where that roof line ends or the building ends is where the lot ends. So everything to the right of that is another property. So basically, it's a 25-foot lot in terms of width, so it's not very big. But just to explain some of the questions that were asked of the assessor, the everything that's to the right of the building is another lot. On page 8, you can see the picture, the front view picture of it, and the inside pictures. I don't know what I can say about this. It's a very old location. It's not typical for a garage that you would see. There are some, older garages and backyard garages that you see throughout the city that it would probably be like this. And our rent and our income information reflects this. So if you go to page 15, we have our comparable list. So we have some general retail leases in the area in the north, and then there are some auto use around the city. And where are you going to take from this? I mean, in terms of the age, the size, I don't think you're going to get a very high rent on it. We put a $12.50 rent on it for the main area. There is apparently a basement area. I didn't see it, but I put a $4 rent on it. And that brings it down to about $10.99 for the entire area. 2% vacancy, shortfall 6. In terms of non-recoverables, we didn't use the 5% that we typically use, so we adjusted it down to 1, and we added a 25-point adjustment on the cap rate. So in terms of the capitalization rate, we actually used an 8% capitalization rate, but we adjusted it upwards by 25 points because of that adjustment on the expenses. That gives us an income value of $178,062, and that is where I'm at. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, questions for the applicant?
What is the rent in place?
I don't have the income and expense information.
Did you not, have you talked to your client? What do they pay for rent?
Yeah, this is a new client. However, no, we didn't. We typically do look at that information, but I couldn't find the income and expense information, which is typically how we go about it. We go through the assessment website and actually access that information. In terms of a lease, no, we didn't ask them for a lease.
And that information wasn't available, correct?
No, I mean, it's not something that we accessed or asked for. For the income and expense information, no, we couldn't find it online.
When you saw the non-co-op request, did you talk to your client and ask them if they'd received our paperwork?
No, that was after the fact.
So you don't know what your client is paying in rent for this location?
No.
I think that was asked and answered.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
Yeah,
Questions?
I'll just clarify. So my assumption was that because the fencing goes all around that, you follow your photo on page 7, that fencing goes all the way down to the end of the lamppost. But until you pointed it out, I didn't see the blue property line. So you're saying, I think I heard someone say that this association owns different properties along this strip of Burroughs Avenue, and that this lot is just that small building, even though the fence continues along to the bushes on the other side of the property. You're nodding your head. I'm asking the question. Do you think that's
Yes. Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now I understand the size of the property more clearly.
Nothing further, Mr. Whitbread?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merrick?
I have none, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And I have no questions as well. Desire for summation, Mr. Assessor?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll conclude this matter. Can move on to the next item, number 4/10/25, St. Mary's. And I believe once again, we do have a preliminary issue on this one, Mr. Kupfer.
No, we'll withdraw the request.
The non-cooperation.
That's correct.
Would you give us your evidence regarding that, please?
I don't have any evidence regarding it. It's included pages 11 11 and 10 of my brief were regarding the non-co-op.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, comments regarding that?
I was kind of confused as to why it was put on there, but I don't know. The sale, I understand that Red River Co-op purchased this property long after the request was made for the income and expense information, so I didn't understand it, but I'll take it as, you know, the assessor has dropped it, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Mr. Whitbread, did you have questions for either party regarding this?
I don't.
Mr. Merritt?
And Mr. Chairman,
I do not either. We will take a short recess. It's 10 o'clock. Let's come back at 10:10, please. So if you put us in camera, please. I thank you. I will call the meeting back to order. We're dealing with item number 41025 St. Mary's Road. Mr. Assessor, I just wanted to confirm with you that you are withdrawing your request for non-cooperation on this property.
Yes.
Thank you. So when you're ready, we'll hear your evidence regarding the assessed value, please.
This is file number 23-246, roll number 080033888700. The street address is 1025 St. Mary's Road. This is again a former Husky, now Red River Co-op. The actual year built between 1977 and 1996. That means it's two buildings. One of them was built in 77, the other was built in 96. We have a large land area here right on St. Mary's of 28,835 square feet, a total leasable area. This is including the car wash and the kiosk of 3,216 square feet. And we have a 2024 modeled assessment of 1,278,000, which should be confirmed today. Page 2 of my brief shows the same removed package sale. Again, former Husky, now it's a co-op. Underneath that, you can see the overhead view. Again, massive piece of property. We're right on St. Mary's. So this is south of Fermor, north of Bishop. Very good location. Page 4 of my brief, 3 of my brief shows the Google Street View. You can see the car wash in the back there and the kiosk and pumps in that in the front. Page 4 of my brief has the same rent comparables table. Again, I've made no additions or subtractions to this. We're showing the highs and the lows. Page 5 of my brief has the car wash vehicle stream here. So we have this down at $9.51 a foot. All of our standard model parameters are the same: 2% vacancy, 3% non-recoverable, $6 shortfall. And then the model's capitalizing the two streams separately. So for the car wash, it has 7.15%. And then scrolling down to page 6, you can see that the kiosk is being capped at only 5%. And the combination of those two is shown on page 7, the income value summary. So we can see our two streams combined here, giving a merged capitalization rate of 5.62. And our total adjustments here, the $262,000, again, is the pumps, tanks, and canopy, like all of our gas stations. The rest of the brief is our standard capitalization rate insert, Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, and information relating to the non-cooperation. So again, I'd reiterate that our combined net operating income and our combined capitalization rates, considering the good location, considering we have a large land value here, which again lowers the risk of any property like this. If a storm like this comes and knocks the building down, you still have a $1 million piece of property on St. Mary's. So given our 2024 assessment of $1,278,000, I feel like this is very reasonable, and I'm going to recommend that it be confirmed today. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
Mr. Kupfer, is this site impacted by any environmental issues?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And the cap rate you feel at for the C store at 5%, you feel that that's appropriate?
Yes, I do.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
Yes, Nathan, I think I heard you say that the 262,000 was for the pumps and the kiosk. Is that correct? And the tanks.
That's correct.
But with a 8.97 land to plan ratio, you don't see any additional land value there, hey?
It's really just a factor of our model. Again, I'm just here to defend the modeled assessment, which I would say is reasonable. For all of our gas stations, I don't believe we ever apply an additional building value. That's generally something that happens with our office properties. I know that gas stations generally try and favor larger parcels of land like this. We'll see a few other gas stations later that are also on larger lots like this. Again, it's good for the owner to buy and hold the land, obviously. It's good for a gas station to have surplus parking and stuff like that. But we're not breaking out a specific additional land value and adding it.
Thank you. No further questions.
I thank you. Mr. Merritt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, the way the city values the subject property, you break it down in regards to a car wash and the kiosks and then the pumps. And that's the standard procedure from the city?
That's right. The pumps, tanks, and canopy are always broken out from the income stream. And then if there's a car wash, that's also done as a separate income stream with separate rents and a separate capitalization rate. And then the two are combined on the income value summary there, which is shown on my page 7.
All right. I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Your comparables, they show VCW on comp 1, 5, 12. Those are all car washes as well as service, like pumps and gas pumps and things. Is that correct? That's a combination?
So I'm going to take a stab at this with about 90% surety. Comparables 1, 5, and 12 are estimated VCW rents that the assessor's broken out from a total rent. So they allotted that $10.50 based on a meeting between us and the agents. We agreed about $10 for the car wash. And then comparables 13 and 14, I believe, are actual car wash rents shown between about $7 and $14. Those ones obviously aren't broken out as there's no SKP. And then I think the agent actually has McPhillips on his comparable list as well for a car wash. So,
okay, I thank you. I have nothing further, so we'll hear from you, please, Mr. Navarro.
Okay, this is 1025 St. Mary's Road. If you turn to page 6, you can see the outside pictures with the new branding on it. The overhead picture on page 7 and the bird's eye on page 8. And we've used the same comparables. We've broken up the rents between the car wash and the C-store. $9 for the car wash, $30 for the C-store, $14.78 combined. That's on one income stream. 2% vacancy allowance, shortfall of $6 per square foot, non-recoverables of 2%. On page 19, you can see the workup at, again, starting with the operating income, sorry, the rent $47,988. 2% allowance, $1,800 in expenses. Cap rate adjustment. Again, that went from 6.5 to 6.75 because of a 25-point adjustment. And then we've added $388,000 in adjustments. That is for the canopies, pumps, and tanks. So we have an indicated market value of $1,058,043. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, questions for the applicant?
Have you been inside the gas station, Marcelo?
I have.
I'm noticing both this brief and the first gas station brief, you have no interior photos. Why is that?
I don't typically take pictures inside the building, especially when I'm coming unannounced.
Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Navarro, your presentation is sort of lump sum together. Would you not
Sure.
consider, when evaluating the subject property, to break it down in regards to almost like the city's presentation, like you value the car wash, you value the kiosks, and you value the pumps. So I think when I'm looking at, I can't quite follow. Normally, I can't quite follow your presentation. It's an easy way to do the evaluation, but it doesn't break it down like the city does. So I just want you to comment in regards to how you did the evaluation, and wouldn't it be more advantageous to do a presentation with these components? Anyways, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. So my take on this is that we are looking at one economic unit. And for that reason, I don't think there's a reason to actually separate out these income streams. They are essentially two different areas within the same economic unit. Now, in terms of the capitalization rate, we can look at the logic of that. You're applying a capitalization rate to a car wash within the same economic unit. Now, I guess the thing that we have to ask ourselves is really, is that how it would sell in the open market? Is that they would be splitting it up and asking themselves, what kind of cap rate can I put in car wash and what kind of cap rate can I put on this store? No, this is one economic unit. That's why I do it that way. I can't explain to you why the city does it their way. It's, they're open to do whatever they want. But this is how I present car washes and C-stores within one, unit, one gas station. Now, for example, if this was a car wash and a C-store and a McDonald's within the same roll number, then I would clearly break it out into two income streams. And surprisingly enough, there are a few of those within the city where we do see a gas station and then a fast food restaurant within the same parcel of land, the same roll number. And you would have to separate out the entity at that point. But in this instance, I think this is basically one economic unit. So that's my reason for not splitting these up.
I thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Chairman, thank you kindly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, your adjustments are $388,000, which is substantially higher than what the assessor used. Do you have different information than the assessor?
No, I'm going with probably newer dates on the canopies, the pumps, and the tanks, because I have the ages of them. show that they're probably artificially high, but that's what we've gone with.
Okay, but so you feel that you've probably got the same numbers of pumps and dispensers and the area of canopy. However, you might have a different year than what the assessors.
Yeah, we've just depreciated it less, simply because we didn't have the ages of them.
Thank you.
Yep.
Desire for summation, Mr. Cuffer?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
I would like to summarize that this would fall under the C-store and car wash category using the agent's own rent comparables tables here. And that range falls very clearly between about $21.83 and $31. And the agent has inexplicably chosen a net market rate of $14.78. Given both of the comparables tables that have been submitted, I would reiterate that the city's net rate is clearly the defendable one here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Navarro, summation?
I have no summation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that will conclude that matter. We can move on to the next item, which is 1011 Marion. Preliminary issue on this, Mr. Cupper?
No, sir.
You are withdrawing your request for non-cooperation?
That's right.
Thank you. Then you may proceed with your evidence when you're ready.
This is file number 23-244, roll number 0603-218-9500. And the street address is 1011 Marion Street. Similar to the last property, this is a former Husky, now Red River Co-op. Changed hands around the same time, I believe, with the same deal. This property doesn't have a car wash, actually. It has a storage warehouse. So that's actually the second income stream here. That's why we're showing the actual year of 1970 and the 1996. Again, two different buildings. No effective age has been added to either. We have a massive land area here. This is 67,462 square feet. So we're looking at about 1.5 acres right on Marion Street. This is right before you hit La Jamodier. We have a leasable area on file of 2,064 square feet. That's a combination of the kiosk and the storage warehouse. Again, we have that broken down. And we have a 2024 modeled assessment of $1,140,000, which I believe should be confirmed today. Page 2 of my brief shows the overhead view. So we are on the corner of Marion and Holden Street here, like I said, just before coming up on La Jamodier. And again, huge piece of property. Page 3 of my brief shows the Google Street View. Again, this is the older Google Street View showing when it was still a Husky. I've included the same rent comparable tables for gas stations and car washes. I haven't included a comparables table for the storage warehouse. Felt like the rate that was being used was pretty fair. That's shown on our page 4. So we just have basic finish, 1,200 square feet and about a $7.50 rent on the space, 4% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a shortfall, which is almost half of the rental amount, and a capitalization rate of 5.75%, giving us $144,000 value for this little storage unit. And then the main valuation here is coming from our SKP, our store kiosk. So this is a smaller store kiosk at 864 square feet. Despite that, our modeled rent is only $44 a foot. So in my opinion, on the lower end, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a $6 shortfall. And again, we're showing a lower capitalization rate here of 5% and an additional building value of $273,000. Page 6 of my brief combines all of that together, showing you an average capitalization rate of 5.12, total income value of 866, and then with that total adjustment, you get the total of 1,140,000. The remainder of the brief, again, standard inserts regarding our capitalization rates, our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, and then the income and expense information at the end there. So again, very good location for a gas station. It's a smaller kiosk. We don't have that high of a rent at $44 a foot. Looking at both my comparables table and the agent's comparables table, I'm going to recommend that this assessment be maintained. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
Yes, have you been to this location?
No, I haven't.
Okay. And everything is model driven here?
That's correct.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Merritt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kupfer, I think you had mentioned, I just wanted to confirm it, the additional value of 273,000 was accumulated from your the cost approach, the Marshall Swiss?
That's correct.
Okay, and that is the replacement cost less depreciation, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I thank you. Just clarification. I think you've mentioned it before. The land to building ratio on this one is significantly higher, but there's no adjustment for excess or additional land. Because
That's correct. It's just a function of how these are modeled within our system. We don't add additional building value for gas stations. Of course, if you're to step back and look at this, with a clear eye, you would say, it's obviously a benefit to have this additional land. And of course, it's going to contribute to your property value. 67,000 square feet here in a good location. It's only going to be seen as a good thing and generally lower the risk if you're the investor, right? Because you know that you have a solid piece of land that's not going to fluctuate or be reduced in value depending on any expenses or anything that can come up like can with your office space or your gas station or whatever else.
okay, thank you. Mr. Navarro, when you're ready, we'll hear from you, please.
Sure. 1011 Marion Street. You can see on page 6 the rebranding, and then also on page 6 you can see the additional building. On page 7 is the bird's eye view, and on page 8 you see the overhead with the property lines in place. So just to give you some background on this, this is a retail gas outlet, just gas, there's no car wash here. At one time, this used to be a gas station plus bulk fuels. So if you see the parcel just to the north of the property, that is where the former bulk fuels used to be located. This property, this location of the former bulk fuels office, it's boarded up, it's empty. It may be used for some storage at this point for the gas station, but I couldn't get into it. Nobody seemed to have a key for it, so there's no access to it. In terms of the property itself, it is a large parcel of land. However, large parcels of land are typical for gas stations. And this used to be a bulk storage facility, as I said. In terms of the income comparables, it's the same chart that we've seen for all of the properties so far. For the kiosk C-store portion, I have $50, and for the office portion, or the former Bulk Fuels office portion, I have $5. Again, I believe this is just storage now, so there's not much of a value on there. Combined, that's $24.21 per square foot. 2% vacancy, shortfall of 6, and in terms of the non-recoverables, I've gone the way that I've done the past few, where I haven't included the 5%. I only have the 1, and we make an adjustment on the capitalization rate of 6.75 to 7. So we have an income value of $684,916, and the adjustment value for the cost elements, that's for canopies, pumps, and tanks, of $329,000, and an indicated market value of $1,013,916, or $1,014,000. That's my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, questions for the applicant?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Merritt?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Mr. Navarro, I think you have a size for the land of 65,340 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? And
that is what I have.
And yeah, and the city is at 67, so we're missing 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So who's correct?
We may have taken an acreage calculation, and I know that the city sometimes has more decimal points on it, and that is usually the reason for the discrepancy. Is that we'll take, for example, I can actually just verify this very quickly. You bear with me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what the reason is. So if you look this up on the city assessment website, the land area is noted as 1.5 acres. It doesn't give a square foot value. So it just says 1.5 acres. So what we do is just multiply it by 43,560, which is, and then we get, that's the reason for the discrepancy.
All right. I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, your additional value, once again, it's higher than the assessors, that because there's less depreciation due to the effective.
Correct.
Desire for summation, Mr. Kupfer?
No summation.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
No, thank you.
Okay, that will conclude that matter. And move on to item number 6 on our docket, 885 Waverly. Mr. Kupfer, request for non-cooperation?
No, sir.
Thank you. You're withdrawing the request?
That's right.
Thank you. So when you're ready, we'll hear your evidence regarding the assessed value, please.
This is file number 23-247. Roll number is 10000005200. The street address is 885 Waverly Street. The owner is now Red River Co-op Limited, former Husky gas station, similar to the last few properties we've gone over. This is quite a bit newer one, actually, built in 2010. Again, large land area, 32,000 square feet, 32,659. So you're at about 3/4 of an acre. And then the leasable area is 3,734 square feet. And that's inclusive of both a car wash and a kiosk pump. That isn't all just the kiosk. Page 2 of my brief shows the overhead view here. So we are headed south down Waverly, just south of Wilkes, north of the Lindenwoods Drive area there. So again, it's a very well located gas station. Page 3 of my brief shows the Google Street View. Again, lots of space here. I believe more pumps on this than you would typically see. I think the last view we've seen had 2 double-sided. This one's 3 double-sided, but I could be wrong. Haven't visited the gas station myself. I've included the same rent comparables table for your reference here. Again, no additions or subtractions. We're showing the high ones and the low ones. Page 4 of my brief has the income stream for the car wash. This car wash is a bit smaller, 1,200 square feet. We have, I think, a pretty fair modeled rent here of $11.06 a foot. Vacancy, expenses, and shortfall, again, all standard model driven at $2, $3, and $6. And then the capitalization rate being derived here is 6.3% for this car wash. So for the car wash itself, we've got a modeled value of $198,000. Page 5 of my brief has the income stream for the kiosk. Again, this is a bit larger of a kiosk at 2,534 square feet. Rental rate of just under $42 a foot. Again, I believe that's reflective of the good location and the fact that this is a 2010 building. So that's why our model's coming up with a bit higher rates, despite the fact that it's a large kiosk. And then we have a capitalization rate of 5.25% being applied on this stream. And an additional building value of $265. So adding that together on page 6, you can see a total capitalized value of $2,118,000 rounded up, and a total adjustment value of $265,000 for an estimated market value of $2,384,000 that I'm going to be recommending be maintained. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessor?
I believe he may have answered this already, but you can confirm that you haven't been at this location.
Correct.
Okay. No, I think that's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merritt, questions?
I have none, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have none other, thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Navarro, when you're ready, we'll hear from you, please.
Okay, this is 885 Waverly Street. This was a former Husky. It's now Red River Co-op. You can see it was built in 2010, 2010. Leasable area combined is 3734. And the site area is 32,659 square feet. If we turn to page 6, you can see the old branding. This has been updated. I didn't include the pictures, but I visit this site every week, so I can confirm that it has been rebranded. You see the overhead picture there on page 7. And just to give you the background on it, so you'll see, actually, I'll ask you to turn back to page 6. So you can see that there are 3 dispensers, 1, 2, 3, 2 pumps on each side. So that is a total of 6 pumps. And you can see the car wash to the left of the picture there. If you turn to page 12, You can see the rent that we applied. We applied a rent of $34 per square foot to the 2,534 square feet C-store. It's a newer C-store, and again, we've adjusted the rent upward in this case. And also in the terms of the car wash, the 1,200 square feet, we've adjusted the rent upwards to $12 per square foot. So over the combined 34 square feet, we have a rent of $26.93 per square foot, or $100,556 for the rent. I'll ask you to turn to page 18, and there we see the summary of the income approach. You can see our rent of $100,556. We're not that far apart between the assessor and myself for the model and ourselves. 2% on vacancy allowance, 6% other, or sorry, $6 shortfall. Again, I've gone with the 1-2, leaving out the 5% non-recoverables that we typically have here, but we've made an adjustment to the cap rate. So we have a net operating income of $95,140. We would have had a cap rate of 6%. 6.25 is what we've adjusted it to because of the expense adjustment there. Again, I think we've gone, the value is high. It's appropriate in our opinion. The adjustments that we've made on it are $598, which are almost double what the assessor has used. So I think we're, in terms of the indicated market value, I think we're good, we're fair. As we stated before, we didn't have the exact age, but I mean, given it's 2010, yeah, I'm not sure about the assessor's adjustments on there. So we're going to recommend $2,120,000. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Kupfer, questions for the applicant?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
I have done, thank you.
Mr. Merritt?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, you can conclude that matter. Bring us to the last item on our docket, number 7, which is 705 Osborne. When you're ready, Mr. Assessor, we'll hear from you, please.
This is file number 23-415. Roll number is 1200-354-8500. And the street address is 705 Osborne Street. This is again a former Husky, now co-op, right on the corner of Osborne and Rathgar, so just south of Morley, kind of that Riverview area. This is a 1994 adult gas station. Land area is a bit smaller on this one, 13,484 square feet. And we have a total leasable area of 1,336 square feet, all on one stream, no gas stations, no storage on this property. And a 2024 modeled assessment of $1,340,000. Page 2 of my brief shows the overhead view here. Again, you can see pretty well located property right on Osborne here. Page 3 shows the Google Street View. Again, pretty good access coming south down Osborne. Page 4 of my brief has the same rent comparables table that you've seen all morning here. No additions or subtractions again, showing the low ends and the high ends. Page 5 of my brief has the income workup here. Again, it's all on one stream. We have kind of a middle of the road kiosk here. Again, not extremely small, but not very big. 1,336 square feet with a modeled rent of $45.76. Everything else here is model driven and standard per the property class. And we have a capitalization rate of 5.15% that's been modeled here. And an additional building value of $215,000 in this instance. All of that combined on my page 6 will give you the estimated market value of $1,340,000 for this property, which I will recommend be maintained today. We have income and expense information that was submitted by this owner as well, indicating monthly net rents with the former Husky before it was sold, of course, $3,666. So an operating income of about $44,000 net being reported for this property. Given the, I can't tell if that's 2019 or 2016, the lease start date, but that's the information that we have submitted. Based on all that, I'm going to recommend that the assessment be maintained today. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro, questions for the assessment?
No, I think we've covered just about everything in the previous one, so I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
No, I have none, thank you.
Mr. Merrick?
No, thank you.
Okay. Just clarification, there was a rental return indicating that NOI of about 44,000, but you feel that the model generated 57,955 is more appropriate for this property?
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, we'll hear your evidence, please.
Yeah. So we have 705 Osborne Street. You can see the pictures on page 6. Again, the rebranding. The general location on page 7 and the bird's eye view. The leasable area in this one is 1,336 square feet. And excuse me. In terms of the income valuation, you can turn to page 12. We've used $32. Sorry, I believe there may be an error on page 12. So you can take from the chart, but what I'll do is I'll ask you to turn to the last page, or page 18. So that has the correct area, 1336. The rent is $32.93. That gives us a rental rate or rental income of $43,994. 2% other, 2% vacancy, $6 shortfall, 3% other additional expenses. Total expenses of $14.54 are deducted. Gives us a net operating income of $41,661. And we've applied a capitalization rate of 6.75 to this location. That gives us an income value of 617,198, and we've adjusted. We've made adjustments of $495,000 to it. Again, we didn't have the ages in this case, so likely the depreciation that we've applied is lower than it should be. But we have an indicated market value of $1,112,000, and I am open for questions.
Mr. Kupfer, questions?
I have none. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Merritt? Sorry, Mr. Merritt, are you muted?
Sorry, I have done, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
Yes, just one. In previous cases, you've mentioned that your management fees are lower, but you've made adjustment for cap rate at 0.25%. Is that the case here, Marcelo?
Sorry, Mr. Whitbread, can you repeat that again?
In previous cases, you've mentioned that you used a lower management fee, but reflected a higher cap rate by 0.25%. Did you do that here?
That's correct. So if you look at page 18, under the expenses, you can see the shortfall there. Management, we would typically use 5% there. And we've only used 1%.
Reflected a 6.75 instead of a 6.5.
Exactly.
Cap rate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
And I have no questions. Desire for summation, Mr. Kupfer?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, I will conclude that matter as well. So thank you very much for your presentations today. We have heard all the items that are scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Good
You as
day.
well.